Okay, for me, agriculture innovation, it's about newness. Newness in the sense that people have to think differently. We need, creative thinking. We need new ways of doing business because we still work sitting with, zero hunger challenges. So it encourages, different people to think differently. It could be in the area of policies. It could be in the area of education. It cannot be business as usual. We have to be creative. We have to come up with new ideas. We have to do things in the manner that we have not done it before. And that requires, thinking outside the box. We need creativity. We need, different partnerships.
Please join our next seminar in the Catalyst of Change series.
Welcome to the Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science seminar series. This seminar is in English with interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Hindi. You may select the language of your preference at the Zoom bar menu. We invite you to follow us in LinkedIn, YouTube, and social media using the hashtag Women in Science for the Catalyst of Change Women Leaders in Science seminar series. We will be hearing today from an outstanding leader, Dr. Hlami Ngwenya, a lecturer at the University of the Free State, and globally recognized new Extensionist Learning Kit for the Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services. Dr. Ngwenya will have a conversation with Grace Mwami, a professional with over 21 years of experience in program and operations management. She currently serves as the program manager as a program manager of the Sustainable Agri-Food Systems in Africa at CIMMYT, where she manages projects in Africa, informs strategies, and drives program execution. We will have an open Q&A session at the end of the conversation, and you are also invited to submit questions via Slido for the speaker, and we invite you to submit your questions and comments on a Slido to be addressed in the Q&A session right after the conversation. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Bram Govers, Director General of CIMMYT, to officially open the event and introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Hlami Ngwenya. Dr. Govers, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. And once again, welcome to our webinar, Catalyst of Change, Women Leaders in Science series. As you know, already in 2023, CIMMYT launched a TED Talk meets Fireside Chat style series that was talking about women leaders, because we want more women leaders in science institutions like ours. To achieve that goal, we want to look at women leaders' paths of leadership, their style, their different ways of working, and understand what we can learn from that, because you can't be what you can see. Therefore, in this series, we highlight women who are leaders in all sorts of capacities, in their fields, in their communities, in their institutions, in the region, in the world, because we believe that leadership styles can come in very many different forms. And today, we have a true Catalyst of Change guest speaker, Hlami Ngwenya, and I hope I pronounced that name right. And Hlami, if I didn't, you please correct me when you intervene. And Ngwenya is a lecturer at the University of the Free State who holds a PhD in sustainable agriculture and multiple qualifications in education and nutrition. She has over 30 years of experience across 45 countries. She specializes in agriculture, food security, policy advocacy, and capacity development. She played a key role in developing the globally recognized new Extensionist Learning Kit for the Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services. Our guest speaker today chairs the board of the Citrus Industry Trust in Africa and serves as an ambassador of the Nuffield International Farming Scholars program. Ngwengya is a recipient of the 2021 National Order of the Baobab in the bronze category, South Africa's most prestigious presidential order, for her contribution to the sustainable agriculture, education, and community empowerment, and of the 2023 South African Society for Agricultural Extension Award, among other acknowledgements. She will be having a conversation with our own Grace, a professional with over 21 years of experience in program and operations management. She currently serves as the program manager in the CIMMYT's Sustainable Agri-Food Systems program in Africa, where she manages projects, informs strategies, and drives program execution. Grace is a certified public accountant and holds a Doctor of Business Administration degree. Her expertise spans across international development sectors with progressive leadership experience in agriculture, health, energy, humanitarian assistance, transition governments, finance, and investments. Her skills are in operations, finance management, fundraising, contracting, project design, implementation, and evaluation in the public and private sector. So I'm sure you agree with me that today we have actually two catalysts of change that will be having a nice conversation after hearing the unique career development path of our catalyst of change. Welcome, Hlami, and please go ahead. And the first thing you're going to do is tell me, did I pronounce your name right? If I did it right, that's great. If I did it wrong, apologies.
Now you did it very right. Hlami Ngwenya, you pronounced it very right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it, and the accolades and everything. And I'm so happy to be here. So yes, the name is pronounced correctly. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So now you can continue with your presentation.
Yes, thank you so much. I feel very honored to be part of, this Catalyst Change, series. I know that I was scheduled to be featured sometimes in January, but some things did not work out in my health and all that. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be sharing the journey with, young scientists, old scientists, other women, but also anyone who care to listen. So yes, as we have indicated that my name is Hlami Ngwenya, I'm just going to talk. I didn't prepare any slides because I like, to talk from the heart. So Hlami is a short form for Hlamalani, which is a Tsonga name, and it has a meaning. Hlamalani means be surprised, and my life has been full of surprises. And I think I'll share a little bit of that as we walk through my journey. My family name is Ngwenya. That also has a meaning. Ngwenya means crocodile. So those who struggle to pronounce my name can call me Be Surprised Crocodile. Yes, um, it is who I am. I am the youngest of 6 children, and I'm not very spoiled, but yeah. So I'm the youngest of 6 children, 5 girls, and 1 boy. I want to share a little bit about my mostly professional journey, but as we go through our professional journeys, it intersects with our personal journeys as well, and it makes this tapestry of colorful and beautiful life. Where do I even start? I could summarize my professional stroke personal journey with its highs and lows, sometimes meeting dead ends, with some broken pieces that are rejoined together. It's about resurrections and restorations, all weaved into this beautiful tapestry of what I call my life. I am 53 years old. I know that a lot of women don't like to talk about their age, but my age is part of who I am. So I'm 53 years old, and I've been working within the international development space, the agricultural sector, the education and the health sectors for over 33 years. I always say that I wear a dual hat as an academic, but also as a practitioner. I am a single mom of 3 beautiful kids, 2 girls and 1 boy. I am a poet. I'm an author. I'm a content curator. I used to host a podcast like this almost 2 years ago. I might share a little bit about that. And all these shape my perspective of life as a professional. And I always say I do what I call human engineering. And I will explain a little bit why I talk about human engineering. It's because I have passion of people. I work with people. Wherever I go, I work with people. I just want to go back a little bit. Now I'm 53, but my career didn't just start, at 53. I started, back then. I am a qualified teacher by profession. So that's where my professional journey started. I started as a teacher, a high school teacher. Um, I then, back then, my father was a priest. Being a priest, he used to do outreach programs. So every time he does outreach, I will go with him. Sometimes we'll go to, under privileged communities to help them as part of the church. And I always saw the plight of people, and something was triggered in me that I would like, to do something that has to do with, community outreach, community development. So when I furthered my studies, I did an honors degree here in South Africa in home economics, but also did a master's degree in home economics. But I specialize in community nutrition because that nutrition part, especially the community part of it, would give me that opportunity to go and interact, with communities. Fast forward, like they said when they were introducing me, I hold a PhD in sustainable agriculture, specializing in facilitation of systemic change within the context of agricultural advisory services. I built my expertise in education, in agriculture, and in rural development. I started as a high school teacher, as I've indicated, but also I went further because teaching is my career of choice. So my first love had always been teaching. So I started as a high school teacher. Then I went and lectured at the College of Agriculture and went and lectured, at university. I started with the University of Pretoria. Then I lectured at the University of Free State, as people have already indicated. But other than lecturing, I also held a number of other positions within the academia space, as I've indicated, but also within government. I've worked with international NGOs. I also worked in the private sector, really holding multiple positions even at the managerial level. Maybe just to share a little bit, I worked within the ministry here in South Africa. We call it a department, but it is the Ministry of Agriculture at the provincial level, where I held a position as Chief Director, Agricultural Producer Support and Development, and overseeing, food security related projects, overseeing extension, and really, smallholder producer support. So I've always have, a passion around that. But also, even currently, I also, do consultancy work for the Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services, as they indicated that, I'm one of the people that played a significant role in the establishment of, the new Extensionist Learning Kit. So that shows that, because my first career of choice had always been teaching. So wherever I go, teaching follows me. Whether I go into research, teaching always follows me. It follows me in different ways. So the work that I do for the Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services, they call me professionalization coordinator, because I coordinate anything that has to do with capacity building of extension personnel globally. So the new Extensionist Learning Kit is one of those. Beyond that, I also wear a hat in, I started, establish a company called Facilitation of Systemic Change. And I'll come back to that because the tool that I use to catalyze change is through facilitation. And I'll come back to that so that, you see where my life, changed. Where did I find something that actually triggered my passion for doing, a facilitation and all that. And yes, I'm working in the agricultural sector for many years. And people will always ask me, have you ever always wanted to work in the agricultural sector? My answer is no. When I was younger, agriculture was not something that I would look at. So I always say I always came into the agriculture through the back door. I think that is a story for another time. But here am I, 25 years later, I work in the sector, I promote the sector, and I am one of the people that are actually driving change within that. But where was my turning point? I know when we tell, life journeys and we tell, journeys of our professional path or even our personal journeys, there is always that one thing that triggers the change, something that you don't forget and say, oh, okay, if it hadn't been for that particular thing, I think my life would have taken a different, a direction. So what was the turning point for me was back then in 2003. At that time, I was a lecturer at the College of Agriculture and working a lot, with extension and advisory services, student doing, community outreach work. At that time, there was a project that we were implementing where we were retraining the extension officers from just project managers or just working with farmers in a different way, and we started training them to think in terms of systems to facilitate systemic change. At that time I started as a trainee, but very soon I was actually promoted somehow to work with a group of facilitators that were facilitating that. I always look back to that and I say perhaps I'm one of the few people who gained the most, out of that initiative. And the reason why I'm saying that is that because I started as a trainee, then I became a trainer and working with the trainers who had conceptualized, that initiative. But I started by documenting the process. I will sit with them whenever they think about what to do and why they want to do that. I'll be listening and documenting that and writing it down. And it gave me an opportunity to actually get into the heads and the minds of the people who were innovating at that time. Fast forward, I started to wear a hat as a researcher, so it became an action research. So now I was not documenting the process just for the purpose of documenting, but I started really wearing a research hat. And when you document a process as a researcher, you use, different lens, you use, different eyes. And because that was an action research, I had to elevate myself. I have to deal with my own personal biases, but really wear a scientific, lens to look at, the process. And that helped me a lot because beyond just facilitating, I began to understand what it means to catalyze change. But also I began to understand how the recipients of these catalysis of change receive it, because that became the project that led to my PhD, where I did a PhD, like we said, in um, um, sustainable agriculture, but really focusing on that action research on facilitation of systemic change. So that work made me appreciate what we call process knowledge. Because when you catalyze change, the person that catalyzes change, they think about the change they want to impart in other people. They think about how they want to do that. They have to think about every little thing that they do so that by the time they start engaging with people, they leave, a long lasting, mark in the lives of those people. So I began to understand, those things. I started, having passion for facilitation. But also, it was also within that project where I learned to understand the importance of personal mastery. That is something that I will share a little bit later, why personal mastery is important for somebody who is a trailblazer or for somebody who wants to make a difference in life. Uh, Fast forward, again, I'm sharing about, my personal journey. I'm known within the agricultural sector, especially for my special skills in facilitation. And this is what I call facilitation of systemic change. And I've shared a little bit where my turning point has been and where the skill or the passion of facilitation had been triggered. And fast forward, I have ran with that skill for the past, 23, if not 24 years. I have been innovating with facilitation at different levels, at community levels. Whenever I teach, I use my facilitation skills. I have done, facilitation in many, many other spaces. So far, I had an opportunity to facilitate over 600 multi-stakeholder engagements in over 55 countries. And this is engagement that is happening at the local level, national level, regional level, but also international level. And because of that part, I ended up, registering a company called Facilitation of Systemic Change so that, I can actually build a legacy for myself. How then do I actually go back, to research? Uh, I, with my facilitation skills, I found a niche. I know a lot of people will have, technical know-how, but when we look at the complexities of the world that we are living in, I found my skills in facilitation, communication, they come in very handy because I'm able to connect, people from different fields. I'm able to see what other people don't see. I'm able to support them to navigate, amidst, those different complexities. I also work with researchers. I've learned that especially the hardcore scientists are trained to be scientists. They can write, for the scientific journals and all that. But more and more, we know that we are being pressured to put our research into use. A lot of people are not trained in that. So that is where I come in with my communication skills and my facilitation skills, where I can support the scientists to be able to communicate their science to 9 science communities, or maybe facilitate, those engagements and bridging, those gaps. But through my facilitation skills, I also have an opportunity to do a lot of high level engagements or policy dialogues, including, working or supporting the United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Organizations. I've also worked a lot within the CG centers or the CG systems where I supported a number of, CG centers. Perhaps maybe out of the 15, I might have worked directly with maybe 10 or 11 of, the centers. So I understand and know a lot, the CG system. Um, I moderate or facilitate, strategic planning processes and all that. And with these skills, I find myself getting into spaces where, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be able to do that. I will just, give you a very practical example where recently I was facilitating something, with the veterinary workforce and all that. And after the meeting, somebody asked me, "Oh, are you a vet?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a vet." "Ah, no, but you are very good." So these are the skills that enable me to work with topics that I would ordinarily not be able to work with. But because I have mastered how human beings tick, hence I call it I'm doing human engineering. So sometimes I might not be a subject, specialist when it comes to that technical know-how, but I've learned that human beings, tick in the same way. So with that, I found myself, supporting organizations or people that are dealing with, topics like biotechnology, veterinary services, as I've indicated. I've worked with people who are doing mechanizations, wildlife, conservation, conservations, and many other different, topics. As long as there's a human being, my skills, come in, and I'm able to support, those processes. One of the major highlights of my work, of my professional journey, as I've indicated, is being recognized, where I received, a Presidential National Orders Award. Maybe just to give a sense, that presidential award, it's is the highest award in South Africa, and it can only be given or bestowed by the sitting president. So for me, just for me to be nominated, to receive that, was really a major highlight for me, and I was recognized for my contribution to, education, a sustainable agriculture, and empowerment of, communities. As I close, I know one can talk about, the journey for the longest time. I just want to highlight a few reflections, lessons learned, that I have learned in my journey, that could, maybe inspire somebody. My journey as a person, but also as a professional, has not always been a bed of roses. My journey is filled with challenges. They are Sometimes I fall, sometimes, I encounter, challenges, but I have learned that, every time I fall, I have to actually rise up. I have to stand up. I have to find, that passion. And sometimes it's okay to ask for help. And I have actually, seen that in my journey. Just 3 years ago, um, when I turned 50, I published a book. I know maybe you can see, published a book. This is a poetry book. It's called Perfectly 50. So I needed something that I will look at my 50 years of, life, and look at it, and just, see what I could, or maybe talk about. So it's called Perfectly 50: The Fall, Rise Up, Bounce Back, and Fly Higher. So poetry, it's my go-to space when I'm not thinking about facilitation, when I'm not thinking about research, when I'm not thinking about all the complexities of the formal job, and when I'm not thinking about lecturing, when I'm not thinking about being a manager. I just go back into poetry, because that is a space where I can relax, I can actually think aloud, and I can write things and all that. And as a result, I have written so many poems, maybe over 100, poems, but 50 made it into this book. And now I'm actually working on my next, poetry book. And in poetry, that is where I can bring out, my communication skills, but also communicate in a very, very relaxed, mode. As I close, I just want to read one of my poems, the poem that I like so much, especially when we are talking to women, and young women, and all that. So what I've learned in life is that you will fall, but when you fall, you have to rise up. When you rise up, you have to bounce back, and you have to fly higher. Secondly, one of the lessons that I have learned is that we always talk about women empowerment. But for me, I want people, or women, to think about emancipation. And I will explain what the difference is. I look at empowerment as somebody giving you power. However, your ability to use that power, it's something that comes from within. Somebody will give you power, it's something that is bestowed, from outside. But if you are not able to utilize that power doesn't really help you. The same apply to space. Somebody will give you the space, but if you don't have the technical know-how of using that space, it doesn't help you as a woman. So as I close, I would like to share this piece which says, unleash your emancipatory power. And this is a poem that I wrote, for women. Dear women, young and old, married or not, in the United States or Free State, single, maybe single husbanded, whatever your case might be, unleash your emancipatory power. Empowerment comes from outside. It is that power intrinsically bestowed in you. Someone will give you the power, the license, and the space, but that never guarantees your ability to use or occupy it successfully. Seek for emancipatory power. Emancipation intrinsically comes from within. It is about your inner abilities, guaranteeing you the ability to utilize that power, warranting you the skills to drive and occupy that space successfully. Harness your emancipatory power and become the best version of yourself. You are a powerhouse. You have innate power submerged within, inherently inseparable part of your being. Enormous power lies beneath your skin, like a diamond in you covered in muddy soil. Let your emancipatory power emerge. You are such a tower of resilience, made from a strong, unbreakable bone. Your body and heart might be broken, but your spirit can never be. You are strong inside than you can ever imagine. Regain your emancipatory power and bounce back. You are valuable beyond measure. No material things can define your value. No currency in the world can buy your virtue. You have the power to define your worth and your wealth. Unleash your emancipatory power. You are a ball of fire, a diligent dynamo, dynamite, undeniable, indomitable willpower, determined to overcome insurmountable odds. Tap on your emancipatory power and ignite unstoppable flames. You are an epitome of beauty, that greater beauty that comes from within, a woman of substance and integrity, an embodiment of nobility. Release your emancipatory power and shine. You have greater command and a sense of power. Your presence counts and it should be counted. You cannot be just a tick box exercise, nor can you be a by the way project. Claim your emancipatory power. You are built on unshakable foundation. You have the power to influence, the power to change situations, the power to build and create, the power to restore and renew. Use your emancipatory power wisely. You are a symbol of courage, fighting visible or invisible battles, getting bruised, brutally so sometimes, yet still rising up, soldiering on with persistence and endurance. Release your emancipatory power to break through. You are wired to see a bigger picture, lateral thinking, multitasking inborn, intuitively navigating amidst complexities. Never underestimate your instinct. Always unleash your emancipatory power. So, this is the poem that when I am down, I remind myself that yes, I have the power to change things. And I would like to leave you with that. Unleash your emancipatory power. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hlami. Such a beautiful poem. I think I'll start saying I will release my emancipatory power. It's really a great end. My name is Grace Moy, and I'm a woman working in science as a program manager in the City Nairobi office. I'm excited to interview Dr. Hlami just because of her in-depth experience across food security and teaching and her passion around equipping students. And also, I must say that I was raised by two parents who are teachers, so this is a great fit for me. So even listening to the poem, imagining you as a podcast host. I think we will ask you for the link just to listen more. And also your change making experiences is very exceptional. So let me start by asking, Sami, your dedication and championship through food security, through responsible agriculture practices is motivating for many of us. So, of all this, what has been the importance, or how has this influenced and shaped your leadership style? And what do you bring in as a key leadership attribute in the spaces that you lead?
Yeah, and I think for me, it really coming from very humble beginnings. And as I've indicated, that my father was a priest, and we will go and support very underprivileged communities. And so for me, just to look at that and thought to myself, if somebody who's privileged needs to always remember that privilege, it's when you are privileged, you shouldn't look down other, or look down on other people. So my leadership style had always been, I see people as people before the poverty, before the material things and all that. I see a person as a person, and I take people as people. And also it helped me to see people as somebody who has capabilities, or somebody who has a potential. So in my leadership style, I really go an extra mile to support, people to really come out of their shells. I go an extra mile to support people because I am where I am today because somebody opened the door for me. So for me, I think it's very important. And yes, I'm actually doing this within, the agricultural sector. And as a result, I also do a lot of, mentorship. I mentor young people. I mentor not only young people, I mentor people because I'm so privileged to understand the sector and from different perspective, and I see a lot of different opportunities, and I don't keep quiet. Whenever I see an opportunity, I make sure that I have to share that with someone.
So now that you did mention about mentorship, and I noted in your profile that you're a Nuffield International Farming Scholars program, what is your approach to mentorship, and what advice would you give us as young, both a mix of young and old professionals and scientists in aspiring to make a difference?
Okay, I like the issue of mentorship. I started a campaign called Perfect Opportunities. And I'll tell you why. Because every time I tell people that I work in the agricultural sector, an ordinary person see a farmer. The follow-up question is, are you a farmer? Then I say, no, I am not a farmer. But what are you doing in agriculture? And I realized that a lot of people equate agriculture to primary production. And with the role that I'm playing within the agricultural sector, I don't have to be a farmer. Primary production, it's very important, but there are other support, functions that support, and hence we talk about these agri-food systems. So primary production is one of it and all that. And with the kind of work that I do, I work with policymakers. I work in education, as I've indicated. I work with researchers and I also do research, but I also work with farmers, extension and advisory services. I work in the communication space and technologies and trade. And this is a letter, is perfect. So perfect is an acronym for policy, education, research, um, farming and finance, extension and advisory services, communications, and technologies and trade. So this is what I use for my mentorship. Even when I go to high school, sometimes I talk to a young person who, under normal circumstances, they don't want to do agriculture because they don't want to see themselves as farmers. But when you expand what else they can actually do within the agricultural sector, they go like, oh, I didn't think it that way. So this is my approach to mentorship. And this campaign that I started of perfect opportunities in agriculture is to broaden the understanding of this sector beyond just primary production, so that if somebody wants to do research, they see themselves there. If somebody wants to do communications and all that, they can actually see themselves within the sector beyond, primary production. So this is what I actually stand for.
Okay, which is a great mix. Thank you for sharing that. And in terms of your great tool, you did mention that you're a great communicator. You have done facilitation of 600 stakeholder engagements in 55 countries. And I'm like, wow, that's a great, remarkable achievement. So looking through, how do we borrow from your lessons to communicate to non-scientist audiences and using mediums and tools to be able to facilitate greater work in what we're doing? But also at the same time, like you did mention, how do we also become ambassadors of human engineering? What tools, what nuggets, what things can we do now, and what would take a long-term strategy to get there?
Yeah. And I think maybe using my personal experience, for me to become a good or an excellent facilitator, I approach facilitation not only as a hobby, but I approach it as a science and I approach it as an art. Why a science? Because I need to understand how human beings tick, you know. So, and I think a lot of people, so sometimes we see a lot of facilitators who come, somebody who's very articulate and, oh, you can become a good facilitator. But facilitation, the way I do it and also how I've learned to do it, it's a science. And people who have participated in my workshops, they will see the difference. So it's not just managing group dynamics here and there. There is a lot of thinking that goes beyond planning. Whether I plan a 2-hour event or a 3-hour or maybe 3-day session and all that, there is a lot of preparation that goes in, because I need to think about the audience. I need to think about the people that will be participating. I need to think about what kind of questions, what kind of change I need to impart. And then I put, that in place. So people who want to be facilitators, especially facilitators of systemic change, you really go beyond just being articulate as a person, but really make an effort to understand what makes human being tick. Yeah. And once you are able to actually do that, then you can actually bring, the facilitation that is actually different. And I can pride myself to say the feedback that I receive, after every facilitation, people will say, this is different. Yeah. This is different because I make an effort to actually make it different. Yeah.
And finally, my last question before I give a chance to other colleagues to ask questions. There's the question around work-life balance. And you did tell us outside of your professional work, you have poetry as you to go to space, and the Perfectly 50 would be a good book to own. I must admit, just from the poem that you've read. So how would you encourage us as women in science? How do we successfully juggle between priorities of job, family, lifestyles? What can we learn from you?
Yeah. Oh, that question. In my next, collection of books, there is a poem that I wrote which speaks a lot to that. The title is The Penalty of Womanhood. And what I say in that poem is that, by virtue of being a woman, you incur maximum penalty. And we can talk about, gender equity and all that. There are certain things where, by virtue of being a woman, I incur maximum penalty, because there is that period. And especially if you want to have children and all that, I could write a book about my penalty of womanhood as I have experienced it. But for me, it's about being aware of that, but also don't shy away from seeking for help. And I think what has helped me to be where I am, I know perhaps if I was a man, I would even be further away. I would be far, because I had to push boundaries. And because I wanted to have children, I have, 3 children. Along the journey, my marriage fell apart, and I remained with the children. The male counterpart, carry on, as if and nothing happens. But because you remain with the children, then you have to rearrange your life. You have to look for support system. And I think for me, that's what helped me. I had to put a very strong support system around me. And fortunately, I love children. So I remember when my children were small, when I was not traveling and I was at home, I would take, children from my friends and neighbors, and, so that when the time comes for them to look after my children, I don't feel guilty for them doing that. So I think for me, what helped me is to have a very strong support system. And as a woman, or maybe not as a woman, as a person, I'm a very emotional person. I cry. One of my poems is the language of my emotions. And I've learned that, yes, I can cry, and that is not a sign of weakness. I cry because that's how I communicate how I feel. Even when I'm happy, when you surprise me, I don't like surprises, because when you surprise me, I cry. I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad, and that's the language of my emotion. And sometimes that will be equated, it will be linked to, being weak. No, 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 I'm not weak. I'll cry and still be strong. So, in a nutshell, as a woman, I had to learn to understand my context, and I've learned to understand my weaknesses. I learned to understand my strength, and where I have strength, I run with it. Where I have weaknesses, I seek, for support, so that I can actually grow. Yes, it is a challenge to actually manage, work life, balance, but it is possible. And I have seen a lot of women who have made it in life. Yes, there are a lot of trade-offs, that we have to deal with it, but it is possible.
Okay, thank you for the chance to have a chat with you. I'll give it I'll pass it along to Isabel, and I hope I did well. I do not have to use the crocodile name. Thank you very much, Dr. Sami. Over to you,
You're
Isabel.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Grace, for having this enthusiastic conversation with Dr. Hlami Ngwenya. Now we would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. We invite you to raise your hand, to turn on your camera, and unmute yourself if you would like to make a question or a comment, or you can submit it via Slido. We have now several questions received from Slido. And the first one is, thank you for sharing. What has been your biggest challenge in science outreach compared to men or other groups?
Okay, I think that I can actually share, and I think it is very much linked with what Grace had, the question that Grace had asked me. I will share my personal experience. When I started my PhD back then, I started my PhD at the same time where I was starting a family as well. And I think it's very important for me to share this, because the question is, what is different? What is the challenges compared to men? So I remember I started my PhD. I was in the Netherlands at the time, and it is at the same time when I was studying family. It was a cohort. So we're a group of maybe 8 people, with 2 women and I think 6 ladies. I remember I got pregnant at that time with my first child, and we had a colleague who was a male. His wife was pregnant as well, but the wife was pregnant and she was at home. I was pregnant, I'm in the Netherlands. That's when I saw the difference, because I'm pregnant, I'm here. He's starting a family, but because the wife is the one who's carrying a baby, he was not affected. He will phone at home, and how are you doing, and all that. But for me, I was the one who was carrying the pregnancy, and it was not an easy pregnancy. So we started as a cohort, but I had to lag behind, right? because first of all, it was not a very easy pregnancy. When people were going to class, I was also going to class, but now I have to deal with, my morning sicknesses and all that. When we finished, it was a sandwich program. When we finished like the first year of proposal writing and all the team went straight, to the field. I couldn't because now I have this little baby and I had to breastfeed and all that. So I had to lag, behind. So these are some of the challenges. And when I talk about the penalty of womanhood that we incur maximum penalty by virtue of being a woman, those are some of the things that we don't talk about when we talk about gender mainstreaming, for example. Yeah. But these are the realities. And because my pregnancies were difficult, another person will be pregnant and have smooth sailing. So, and when we talk about these things, we need to see the difference of different women, how they experience these challenges. So yes, so that was one of the challenges. I mean, the entire team, they went ahead, but I remained, I lagged behind. I had to follow and all that. And why? Because I got punished for the fact that I wanted to have a family and have a study at the same time. And these are the penalty of womanhood that I write about in my other poem.
Thank you so much. Here we have another comment and question about emotions. Thank you for validating that emotions. The emotions are normal and we all have them. Some of us have had supervisors telling us that we are too sensitive or we show too much emotion. So how can we respond to such comments?
Ah, so whoever said that, maybe they can inbox me. I will send them, a copy of my other poem, the language of my emotions, because it speaks exactly around that. Because when we grow, when we're young, we will tell when you cry, somebody will tell you that, oh, you are weak and all that. But as I grow older, I realize that my tears is actually the language of my emotions. That's how I express my emotions. And people are different. Even when I'm happy, I cry. Yeah, but I actually had to write this poem to affirm myself to say yes, I can cry and be strong at the same time. This is how I'm made. I'm made up. Some people don't cry at all, and this is how different we are. You know what? I cry, and that is the language of my emotions. So I think, if the person who asked this question follow me on LinkedIn and inbox me, I'll just, share with you this poem. And next time you cry and they tell you you are weak, just read that poem and say, this is the language of my emotions.
Thank you so much for sharing. We have another comment. This is a great conversation. Could you give us 3 daily actions to emancipate ourselves as women? Thank you.
Okay. Like I said, I mean, and I like it because you're not talking about empowerment. Empowerment is something that somebody give you. And I think for me, the first thing is to understand that empowerment is the power that somebody gives you, but emancipation, it's your ability to use that power. And I think that is the first step. You need to know that you have the power within you, understanding that. Yeah. And because sometimes we cry for spaces, oh, yeah, we need more space and all that. But even if they can give you whatever space, if you have not worked with your inner ability on how to use that space, it doesn't matter how much space somebody can give you and how much power people can give you. And I think for me, that is something that you need to look at to understand that. And secondly, where you have weaknesses, find ways of actually dealing with that. When I do my facilitation, especially when we deal with personal mastery and all that, I do something called the cloud. It's an analogy that I use to say everybody has the clouds around us. Everybody is born with potential, but there are a lot of clouds around us. Your cloud could be poverty, it could be low self esteem, your cloud could be being bullied, and those clouds, they cover your ability to shine. So as a woman, you need to understand what your clouds are and try and start, working on those clouds. In the case where you are not able to do that, look for help and remove those clouds one by one, and you'll be able to shine and unleash your emancipatory power. That's what I will say.
Thank you. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Here is a comment. And then I agree very much with the power of facilitation, facilitating to change systems. What kinds of training, practice, or mentoring can we pursue to build facilitation skills among researchers?
Okay, so I think you might need to look around where you are, because there might be some people who are actually offering these facilitation skills, but in most cases you have to learn by doing. You learn by doing. So you cannot learn facilitation in theory. You can read about it and whatnot, but in most cases you have to learn by doing. So yes, you might get people to teach facilitation, but you only become a better facilitator when you get your hands dirty and you start actually learn by doing. And also, if you contact me, find me on my LinkedIn, Dr. Hlami Ngwenya, and just inbox me, then I can be able to share some information. And also, if CIMMYT has that possibility to train people, I could actually avail myself to provide training and facilitation skills, because that's what I do. And I like to see other people, especially scientists as well, and young managers and all that, to gain these skills, because these are the skills that have changed my life.
Thank you. We are about to finish. So how would you like to close our session of today? What would be our takeaways?
Okay, so the takeaways again is that, as a woman out there, learn to unleash your emancipatory power. And I put that, I'm not saying fight for spaces. You can fight for a space, but if you don't know how to utilize that space, it doesn't matter how much space you can be given, right? And your ability to use that space comes within you. And CIMMYT is actually doing that now. They are having this this a catalyst of change series and all that. It's a platform and a space that they are giving you. So how you use this space remains your responsibility. And I think that is the message that I would like to share with the listeners out there. Learn to unleash your emancipatory power.
Thank you so much. This is very wise recommendation and reflection for us to consider. On behalf of CIMMYT community, we would like to thank Dr. Hlami Ngwenya for her reflections and sharing with us her outstanding professional and personal journey. On behalf of Dr. Brian Govers, Director General of CIMMYT, we thank you so much for your valuable time and for being here today. Also, we thank the audience that joined today. Do not miss our following Catalyst of Change, Women Leaders in Science series in 2 weeks. Have a nice day. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Like everybody, your journey begins with where you're born and how you're brought up. And so my mother is a very, very defining factor of my career. She was a teacher and administrator within our schools and colleges. She had to bring myself and my 4 siblings up. Not just us, actually, like 10 other people or more passed through her hands. And for her to ensure that she gave us all equal opportunities and the education that we desired and qualified for, she did extensive farming for maize and later wheat. And it's amazing that I'm here at CIMMYT, where we work on maize and wheat. We are at the mirror that younger scientists are going to be looking at, young women scientists especially, and so continuing to use the example of what we are to mentor them and to create the images that are positive for them. Largely, we have to be the change that we want to see. We have to walk the talk. Encourage that culture where creativity, diverse opinions matter. We will actually continue to provide groundbreaking solutions.
Please join our next seminar in the Catalyst of Change series.